Okay, in this video we are going to take a look at the actual Hummingbird Duo board, and I'm going to walk around the corners of it, or walk around the perimeter of it, to talk to you about what gets connected where. So the first thing to note, however, is that the Hummingbird Duo, this particular board, actually has another board underneath it. It has an Arduino, and an Arduino is a programmable microcontroller, which means it has the ability to do a lot of things like connecting to other sensors and readouts and motors, and it can really expand the use of this Hummingbird board, but it's beyond the scope of what we're going to be doing in terms of this project. So the back looks like this, and that is the Arduino, but for now we're going to focus on the front side, which is the Duo side. Okay, so the first thing I want you to look at is off to the right hand side. There is an arrow that says USB. And right underneath that arrow is the place where the USB cable gets connected. And that's the first step. That's what you do to connect your board to the computer so that it can see it and so that the programs that we can run can actually read the board. Okay, and when the USB is connected to the computer, the green light right below it will light up. Okay, moving to the top of the board, you will see there are green ports. Two of them are bigger. They have 4 ports on them. And then the other ones are smaller, and they have 2 ports on them. So the first ones are what we call our tricolor LEDs, or RGB LEDs. And so what gets hooked into them is, if you can tell, the first port has an R underneath it, so that's red. The second port has a green. The third port has a B, which is blue. And then the fourth port has a minus sign, and that just means ground or negative. And so that's generally a black cable. So red, green, blue, and black. So that's RGB1, or tricolor 1, RGB2, or tricolor 2. And then for the remaining 4, there is just a plus and a minus. So the minus, as we said, was ground or negative, and that's going to be the black cable. And the plus is just going to be whatever other cable you have with your single color LED. So for example, it would be red and black, or it could be yellow and black, or green and black, or orange and black. And that's how you connect your LEDs into these ports here. Okay, moving off to the left-hand side, you will see a black barrel. That barrel is where power is plugged in. And when power is plugged in successfully, that light above it will turn on. It looks like an orange light. Sometimes it might look red. The barrel jack for the power is actually used to be able to power our motors. Everything else, like lights and sensors, actually will work without external power, but the motors require this power source. Okay, and as you go down, you'll see the orange blocks. The orange blocks are for our DC motors. DC motors are the ones that turn in one direction or the other direction. They just continue to rotate. They're good for things like wheels. And again, you'll look at the motors, there's a plus and a minus. The interesting thing about motors is they actually don't have, these DC motors don't have 2 different color cables. It's just yellow. And so depending on which yellow you plug into which port, that will determine the direction that the motor turns. So it's either forward or backward. Okay, and right below that are our servo motor ports. And the servo motors hook up, if you can tell, along port 1, let's say, you see port 1 is on the bottom, port 2 is the next one, port 3 is the next one, and port 4 finally at the top is the last servo motor. And you'll see that next to the top ports, there's a B, an R, and a Y, and that stands for blue, red, and yellow. Sorry, black, red, and yellow. And those are the cables that come out of the servo motors. Right? Towards the bottom, you can see it says sensors and vibration. So there are 4 ports for sensors. The sensors can go in any one of these ports one at a time, or multiple. You can have multiple sensors hooked up if you want. So let's just take block number 1, this blue one here. The block says S, plus, and minus. S is the sensor cable, plus is the positive power cable, and minus is the negative power cable. And generally, you see them, the sensor cable is going to be yellow, The positive is going to be red, and the negative is going to be black. And you'll do the same for each of these blocks down below. And then finally, there are the vibration motors, and these are the last ones on the bottom right here. Plus and minus are going to be very similar to the plus and minus of the DC motors. It doesn't really matter which ones you plug in, that will determine the direction forward or backward for those motors. Okay, and that's the general outlay of the Hummingbird Duo.